All right, everyone, board exams are right around the corner, so let's power through one of the most important chapters in biology, how organisms reproduce. We're going to break down all the key concepts you absolutely need to nail for this one. Let's get right into it.
So, here's our game plan for today. First up, we'll start with the blueprint of life itself, DNA. Then, we'll dive into the two big strategies organisms use, asexual and sexual reproduction. From there, we'll zoom in on a human reproductive system as our main example. And we'll wrap it all up by talking about reproductive health. Let's do this.
Okay, Section 1, the blueprint of life. You see, before we can even talk about how organisms reproduce, we've got to ask a much more basic question. Why do they do it in the first place? And the answer, well, it all starts with the instruction manual for life itself. So why reproduce? I mean, think about it for a second. An organism doesn't actually need to reproduce to stay alive, right? It's not like breathing or eating. The answer is much bigger than any one individual. It's all about the survival of the species. Without reproduction, any species, from the tiniest bacteria to the biggest blue whale, would just disappear. Now, if an organism is going to create another one that looks just like it has to have a plan to follow. And that plan is DNA. Think of it as the ultimate blueprint. It holds every single instruction for how to build and operate an organism, and it's what gets passed down from one generation to the very next. So here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. At its very core, all reproduction, no matter how simple or complex, kicks off with one absolutely fundamental event, making a copy of DNA. That's step one for any new life. And this copying process is incredibly good at what it does. The goal is to make a near-perfect duplicate. That's how a species, like us humans, keeps its basic design and characteristics going, generation after generation. But, and this is a huge but, nothing in biology is ever 100% perfect. During this copying process, tiny, random errors can happen. Think of them like little typos. The result is that the new DNA is almost identical, but with slight differences. And these little differences, we call them variations. Now, you might think these typos sound like a bad thing, but they are incredibly useful. Why? Because variation is the raw material for evolution. Imagine a bunch of bacteria living in water that suddenly gets warmer. Most might die, but a few with a random variation that lets them tolerate more heat will survive and reproduce. That's how variation helps a species adapt to a changing world and survive over time. Okay, now let's look at the most straightforward strategy for making copies, asexual reproduction. This is where a single parent does the whole job all by itself, creating what is essentially a direct copy. This whole direct copy thing can happen in a few different ways. For example, you have fission, where a single cell, like an amoeba, literally just splits in two. Then there's budding, where a new organism grows right off the parent, like you see in Hydra. The key thing to remember for all of these is that it's simple, it's fast, and it only involves one parent. The strategy here is all about efficiency, not so much about variety. But what if you need to create more variation, and you need to do it faster? Well, that's where our next mode of reproduction comes in. Sexual reproduction is a more complex strategy, for sure, but you can think of it as a creative mix, combining the blueprints from two different parents to really boost that variety. This slide really lays it all out, doesn't it? On the one hand, you have asexual reproduction. One parent, offspring are nearly identical clones. It's super efficient, but you get very little variation. On the other hand, you have sexual reproduction. Two parents combine their DNA, creating offspring with a totally unique mix of traits. It's more complex and slower, but the big payoff is that huge increase in genetic variation. Okay, but hold on a second. If you just combined all the DNA from two parents, wouldn't the offspring have double the right amount? Biology has a really clever solution for this. Organisms create special cells called gametes, a sperm and egg, and these cells carry only half the usual amount of DNA. That way, when a sperm and egg fuse, the resulting embryo has the correct, full set of DNA all over again. So let's apply all this to the main case study you need to know inside and out for your exams, the human reproductive system. This is where we really see how specialized organs have evolved to make sexual reproduction happen. All right, first up, the male system. The main organs are the testes, and they have two jobs: produce sperm, which are the male gametes, and produce the hormone testosterone. From there, a tube called the vas deferens delivers the sperm. Along the journey, glands like the prostate add fluids, which create semen.
This fluid is super important because it helps nourish the sperm and gives it a way to travel. So really, the whole system is built for production and delivery.
Now for the female system. The two ovaries produce the eggs, which are the female gametes. About once a month, an egg is released and it travels into the fallopian tube. Now, this tube is a really important spot because if sperm are present, this is where fertilization usually happens. The egg then continues its journey to the uterus, that muscular organ in the center. If it's been fertilized, the new embryo will implant itself in the uterine wall and begin to develop there.
This slide basically maps out the whole journey to a new life, so let's walk through it. Step 1, fertilization. A single sperm fuses with the egg. Step 2, implantation. That fertilized egg, now an embryo, embeds itself into the wall of the uterus. Step 3, nourishment. The placenta forms, acting like a lifeline, connecting the embryo to the mother to provide all the oxygen and nutrients it needs. And that leads to the final step, gestation, the development of the fetus over about 9 months.
All right, we're in the home stretch. In our last section, we're going to look at what happens when that journey doesn't actually begin. And we'll talk about the broader, really important topic of reproductive health. This is a crucial part of the chapter, so let's get into it. So, every single month, the uterus prepares for a potential pregnancy. It does this by building up a thick, nutrient-rich lining. But if the egg isn't fertilized, that lining isn't needed anymore, so it breaks down and is shed from the body. This monthly cycle is what's known as menstruation. A key part of reproductive health is, of course, understanding contraception, methods to prevent pregnancy. As you can see, they work in different ways. You've got mechanical barriers, like condoms, that physically block sperm from reaching the egg. Then there are hormonal methods, like birth control pills, that usually work by preventing the ovaries from releasing an egg in the first place. And finally, there are surgical methods, which offer a more permanent solution by blocking the pathways for sperm or eggs. And we'll end on this thought. Understanding all this biology isn't just about passing an exam. It's about understanding life itself. This knowledge empowers you to make responsible decisions about your own health and your future. It's a powerful idea to keep in mind. That's all for this explainer. Study well and good luck on your board exams.